Welcome everyone to the 2021 Freight Frenzy Northern California First Tech Challenge kickoff. We want to get everything started so we can get everybody up to speed as fast as possible and let you guys have a lot of fun playing this year's game, getting ready. First off, wanted to make sure we take a moment to thank our wonderful sponsors, Raytheon Technologies, Qualcomm, and PTC. They are the three primary sponsors that help make this program possible for all of you to be able to participate. Additionally, we wanted to make sure that we spend a second or two to thank Qualcomm. Qualcomm is a Northern California sponsor and really has helped enable the program in our region. We truly appreciate their continued and ongoing support. And if you get a chance, make sure you say thank you as well. All right, so just sort of a quick overview of what we're looking at today. 9 o'clock, hopefully you guys were all online and watched the stream from First Headquarters. It was exciting to see the game get released after anticipating it for so long. 10 o'clock, that's what we got going on right now. We're gonna go through a handful of quick NorCal updates, sort of give a little bit of a flavor for what to expect this season. 11 o'clock, I'm going to be joined by a couple of our long-seasoned head referees, Rick Swan and Jeff Green, and we'll be open and available for questions about the field and about the game, and hopefully we'll give everybody a good flavor. There'll be a brief lunch break, and then starting at 1 o'clock, we'll have a series of workshops. So there'll be first at 1 o'clock a rookie coach crash course, 2 o'clock software workshop, 3 o'clock Onshape, 4 o'clock, tips on working with GitHub, and at 5 o'clock, some tips on how to get involved in community outreach with your team. So just as in ways of housekeeping, first off, this is a GoToWebinar session, and we run these with everybody muted. So you won't be able to talk, but you'll still be able to ask questions. So what we want you to do is take advantage of the questions feature of the GoToWebinar tool. And so you'll see there's a questions section. So type your questions in there. One of us will take care of making sure that we try to get them all answered. If we do happen to run out of time and we aren't able to get all questions answered, we will make an effort to answer the unanswered and post them on the NorCal FTC website. Recognize the day is broken into multiple sessions. So this GoToWebinar session that you've joined this morning will also be the one we use for the field walkthrough, but the afternoon sessions, all the workshops are being done through separate Zoom sessions. And so make sure you're paying attention to that as you break out into those other activities. We are recording all of these sessions. So this one is currently being recorded, and we will post links to our YouTube channel with information for all of the sessions that get recorded today. By way of introduction, Playing at Learning is your Northern California program delivery partner for First Tech Challenge. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we rely very heavily on the community support. So particularly during this time with all the impact of the pandemic, support from the community is a really critical thing. So if you can help us connect with corporate support, or if you've got some funds you're willing to send our way, it would be greatly appreciated. Wanted to take a second, in the background on the call on this session with us today, we have the whole First Tech Challenge staff for Northern California, Jill Wilker, myself, and Diane France. So there may be a couple of additional voices that'll join us as we start to get through some of the questions. All of the material, some quick announcements. So all of the first kickoff materials should be on the first website in about, I think it's actually 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So in about this time. I guess I didn't say my name. I'm Mark Edelman, and you'll hear a lot from me today. So the first materials get pushed up at about 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you should be able to access all the manuals, all the setup guides, all of the animations and things like that shortly after that time. The official forum, the Q&A forum, where teams can go ask questions, is anticipated to open later this month. So be prepared for that. Recognize that it is new software this year, so there'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but we think it's actually going to be beneficial, not a lot of new capabilities. And like last year, we are going to be working with completely electronic rosters. So you need to make sure that all your team members are registered through the first dashboard onto the team roster. This is something you can actually go ahead and start now. You don't need to wait. Get it taken care of up front. Okay, some quick overview of the season. So simple truth is there's a lot we don't know yet. So what we're anticipating now is likely going to end up changing in some way before we finish the season, just because there's just a lot we're going to have to adapt to. We're currently anticipating our qualifiers beginning in December and running through mid-February, with the registration for attending qualifiers not opening up until late October. We've been talking, and there is some possibility that we're looking at maybe 1 or 2 events in November. A lot of that depends upon finding hosts that are able to host events in November, as well as the availability of teams to play in November. We've been trying to gather as much information as we can, and basically the short version of it is stay tuned. We're still figuring this all out. We're anticipating that our Northern California Regional Championship will take place likely in early March. The exact date is still to be determined. We need to finish it in early March to make sure that it fits into the schedule for the World Championship. So for us in the Western region, we feed into the World Championship in Houston. That would take place in mid-April. So just as a heads up, and one of the things that makes us a little panicky, the current registration of teams looks a lot like a normal season, not like a pandemic season. I think as of last night, we're at 125% of our last normal season. So that's a better than average growth. We're at 140% compared to this time last year in terms of the number of teams. That coupled with having a little bit of challenge finding tournament sites means that we may not have as much play capacity. So it may mean that we aren't able to support teams playing as many times as we normally do. So again, stay tuned. We are looking at a couple of different styles of gameplay this year. And so it's a mix of traditional, hybrid, and remote. So traditional, for anybody who's a veteran, you guys are all used to it. That is a mix of alliance-based gameplay and in-person on-site judging. Remote, that's the style we played last year, where teams play at home alone and on a partial field. And we did all of the judging via remote conferencing over Zoom. We are exploring as well doing a hybrid this year, where we'll do match play in person with alliances and shift the judging off to remote, like in the week prior to the weekend of gameplay. So just be prepared. We're trying to figure out the best way to fit all this in, and we'll figure out. It's possible with the hybrid model and even with the traditional model that we may be facing some constraints based on venue rules. So the venues that we're able to find may impose additional capacity constraints on us. They may say, you know, you can't have the full capacity of the gym, you can only have half. So that may mean we have to put some limits on the number of team members that can attend with. In the case of a hybrid event, that would apply only to the match play. Wouldn't necessarily then apply to the judging aspects. The judging, we'd still be able to accommodate all team members involved in the remote judging. All right, so basic structure we're looking at for this season is a mix. We're expecting that we're going to have some remote events, some hybrid events, and some traditional events. Exactly how many of each, we really don't know, and we likely aren't going to know for a little while. I mentioned the idea that we may have some limitations on how many people can attend events, right? The number of teams that we can support at an in-person or hybrid gameplay model event, the size of the audience. It may be possible we can have an event with no audience. And with a combination of the two, the total capacity, we don't know what all the constraints are going to be yet. And we may be looking at some other kinds of constraints as well. So, it's possible that some of our sites would require vaccinations. That may present a problem since our program covers age group students that aren't currently eligible for vaccinations, may require masks, may require additional kinds of waivers, right? So there's a lot of things we don't know yet. In looking at the calendar, we currently only have 14 viable dates. So that if we end up doing remote only, that means that there's exactly 14 possible timeframes we can do events. With traditional or hybrid, we may be able to do more than 14, but we're going to need to see how that plays out. We are having trouble finding sites that are willing to allow us to come in for events. In the past, we've used, for example, corporate sites. We're pretty certain that none of the corporate sites are going to be available for hosting events this year. So we really can use your help in identifying sites for traditional or hybrid events, as well as identifying potential hosting organizations for any of the remote events. So we need your help to make this happen. So if you think you're willing to talk to us about helping, drop us a note at ftc@playingatlearning.org, and we'll get it figured out. Okay, so a couple of things that are new, different from last year to think about. There's the new drivers hub. If you've been watching the announcements out of FIRST, you've seen this get announced over the summer. It's a new Android device that takes the place of a couple of pieces out of what was traditionally the driver station. So it replaces the Android phone and the USB hub and USB OTG adapter, right? So it eliminates a couple of pieces. Long term, this is being brought in to help eliminate the Android phone, right? Android phones are getting harder to find that fit within the constraints of what's needed to support FIRST Tech Challenge. And it provides a simple way of putting together a relatively robust, easy to manage system. So if you are in the process of buying devices, the driver's hub may make sense. Along with that, the latest version of the robot controller and driver station Android apps will no longer be in the Google Play Store. There's been a whole lot of changes to the way the Google Play Store manages apps that basically make it nearly impossible for the app to continue to be published there. Thankfully, the folks at Rev Robotics have put together a software application called the Rev Hardware Client that can be used to completely manage installation of either of those two apps onto any of the devices in a typical FIRST Tech Challenge robot system. So that is a nice addition in place of using the Google Play Store. Traditional event, we're going to have to go back. So everybody got used to using an electronic portfolio and feedback form last year with our remote events. As we go back to traditional events, recognize that those will need to be printed, right? So it's something you're going to have to bring to the event again. So just be prepared for that. We're anticipating that both the remote and hybrid event structures for all the judging documentation will still be electronic uploads for remote judging purposes. And then recognize also the scoring process for traditional versus remote is slightly different. It's the same scoring calculation engine, but the remote match play will be managed again through the FTC Live cloud-based scoring system, while the traditional and hybrid events would be managed through the software running on a laptop at the event, like they were in previous seasons. Just to remind everybody, that in the case of a remote field, it is a fraction of a full field. It is basically 2/3 of the field. There's a bunch of great resources that are being published today that'll explain what you need to do and what you need to buy or make to set yourself up for a remote field. I would sort of encourage you to anticipate that it's likely that if you participate in one or more events, that one of them will be a remote event. So be prepared to adapt to either environment. And as a hint, if you are reusing the cubes, the blocks from prior seasons' games, there is an option to purchase the weights that are needed to insert into those to make them work for this year's game as a separate item. But at when you go to Andy Mark and look at the field options to buy, there's basically a full field or a half field. So half field, if you thought about it right, with the way the shared shipping hub is in the game, the half field option for the remote events basically does not need that element anymore, so it isn't included. Full field includes basically the red half field, a blue half field, and the shared shipping hub. I'm getting told that there's a question about event hosting. Want to chime in and give me that question?
Yeah, there's actually two. One that I'm not sure there's an answer to, so we'll feel free to chime in, is basically around the advancement for event host for in-person events.
Yeah, so what I'd ask is let's hold those kind of questions. We've got a town hall meeting coming up in a few weeks.
Okay.
Let's hold those kind of questions about event hosting and the details. Either send us an email or hold it for the town hall, and we'll address it there. We really want to kind of focus today at the game and the field to sort of give everybody a seat. But I do appreciate that people are asking, because it really is going to boil down to everybody stepping up and being part of helping each other to make the gameplay options happen for everybody.
Yeah, maybe a event hosting town hall that's specific. There's also questions around being outdoors, et cetera. So I think there's interest in people willing to help. So maybe it's just a matter of pulling all those together and see what options we can come up with.
Yep. But again, let's push to the town hall. We're under time constraints to get everything done to fit into the schedule today. So I can't really run endlessly through open conversation.
Given the game questions come at 11, is that right? What type of questions would you like for this section of the webinar?
About this material.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, so one thing we're trying new this year is field visits. So last year, we really weren't able to open up the field for people to come to see because of the way the pandemic building use limits were imposed on us. There wasn't a viable way for us to do it. This year, we do have the option with the current constraints here in Santa Clara County to allow teams the option of coming in. So we have set up a reservation-based system that allows teams to reserve a time slot. So there are 18 time slots this weekend and 12 more in the evenings in the coming week that teams can come in and get a chance to actually look at the field, walk around on the field, and if you're wearing disposable gloves, actually be able to touch and feel and handle some of the game elements. There's a whole bunch of requirements. There was an email that went out to the group, the Google group, end of this week that describes more. It is time limited, so we're trying to get as many teams through in an hour as we can reasonably. So you end up with about 15 minutes to be able to look and ask questions and see the field, and about 5 minutes to get in and out of the building. We are limiting the number of people that can participate, so 4 students and 1 adult. The adult is mandatory. The students are optional. You can bring anywhere from 0 to 4 students, but not more. And there is no in-out. So that set of group, they're going to come in once and they're going to leave, come in as a group, and they're going to leave as a group. Masks will be required. As I mentioned, if you're going to touch anything, you need to be using disposable gloves. And pre-registration is absolutely required. So there's an Eventbrite-based system that will allow you to reserve a free ticket. There's exactly 1 ticket available for each 20-minute time slot within the windows that are described on the top of the slide. No ticket, you don't come in. And please don't register for more than one slot for your team. We're trying to make sure that we provide the maximum number of teams the opportunity to participate. So I've kind of put some heavy-handed constraints. If I find that you've registered for more than one slot, I will likely delete both of your tickets and you won't be allowed to come in. So please be gracious about it and make sure that we're sharing this opportunity with as many teams as we can.
Mark, before you leave, where is that information? Where's the link to register? How do people find that?
So the easiest way is through the Google group. It isn't currently on the NorCal website. I didn't get time to be able to put it there. So if you're not part of the Google group, easiest way to get there is at the top of the NorCal FTC homepage. There's a link to the Google group. Normally we encourage people to use that link to go join the Google group, but it takes you directly to the Google group. And it would be one of the last two messages, the two most recent messages, includes the field visit information. We are going to be looking at running sort of ongoing team support sessions this year. Last year we ran several webinars covering robot inspection, FTA help, control system help, and sort of game and gameplay questions. We do have the option this year of the possibility of limited in-person help as well. Again, given that the current pandemic's a little less tight than last, so stay tuned. More information will be coming about those as we get the schedules figured out. Additionally, we have our, last year we sort of encouraged the sort of this teams helping teams model. We do have several workshops that are coming up live today. There are additional workshops that already have recordings posted on the NorCal FTC website, as well as we have all the recordings from last year's Teams Helping Teams sessions. So feel free to consume as much of that as you wish. We are anticipating that there's going to be a second day of workshops coming up later that we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other aspects, including inspection, some common failure modes for robots, right? Things to avoid in terms of maybe make sure you have a successful event, and then some best practices for judging. Something I did last year that I'm going to try to push a little bit again this year is this concept I called fair play. So it was a way of encouraging teams, particularly with the sort of the remote gameplay model, a way of encouraging teams to be open, honest, and transparent about what they're doing. So there's a page on the NorCal FTC website. It's been updated a little bit for this year. But basically the idea is to encourage teams to take video of all the matches that they play, at least the ones that are sort of the remote self-scored ones, and share that, right? Sort of in interest of being transparent. There's a general scheme for creating tags that go along with those videos that allow for searchability. So what we're trying to do is encourage everybody to go ahead and sort of publish all those videos, create a way of sharing either via YouTube or others, and sort of encourage. So we had a lot of very positive response to it last year. One thing I will remind everybody about is as you're browsing through other videos and you see things that don't look right, it's okay to call out the other teams on the mistakes they make, right? Traditionally, teams learn about their misunderstandings of rules at the first events they go to. That first set of interactions that they have with the referees at the event solidifies their understanding of the game, right? It's pretty typical early in the season for the referees at the event to talk to, 2/3 or more of the teams about misunderstandings in gameplay, right? So we all in this fair play model are part of that feedback to the teams. Just because a team did something wrong in a match, it's important to remember it doesn't mean that they're doing it wrong on purpose, right? There likely isn't any intent there. There's just some missing understanding. And so encouraging them to learn and grow and build a better understanding is kind of what we want to get to with the whole fair play effort. All right, so as we start to wind up this session this morning, there's a whole bunch of resources that are out there on the FIRST website, firstinspires.org, that are going to be useful. There's a document and a video that are out now that are about what the remote field requirements are. There's some instructions on how to build your own version of the game and field elements. There's videos on how to work with the scoring system. I mentioned earlier the official forum Q&A. It's not quite up and open fully yet this year, but it's going to be there soon. There's a whole bunch of good resources on building robots, the electrical aspects, programming them, getting ready for inspection, the notebook and portfolio. There's great resources for coaches and mentors, coaches playbook, mentor manual, funding and fundraising thoughts. So great opportunities to learn, but be prepared to do a little reading. Right? They are documents. On the NorCal FTC website, norcalftc.org, we're in the process of getting it updated for this season. The Teams Helping Team sessions we talked about, really a good idea to make sure that you sign up for the NorCal FTC Google group. Recognize that as many members of your team as you wish can be part of that Google group. One of the things we've found in the past is that sometimes just the coach has signed up. So sometimes the information gets bottlenecked if the coach is busy or out of town or things like that. So feel free to sign up as many of your team members and adults that are helping the team as you wish. The team list is now starting to be updated and populated based on the current registration. We are working on getting the team roster and other kind of information integrated as well. And so be prepared. There's a great resource there. Qualifier schedule, as we develop it, will show up there. It's not current. The one that's there would be from last season. Don't worry about it yet. The registration instructions, how to go through registering for a qualifier, will show there. And there will be, that set of instructions will basically be the same as prior years. So you can go ahead and look at that now. The dates, the timeline for when registration happens will likely be different this year, just based on the difference in how the season's going to go. And then the limits to how many times a team can register for events may be different this year as well, depending upon how many events we actually end up with compared to how many teams. We do unfortunately have to have a handful of policies, i.e. what happens if you no-show an event, or what happens if we have to cancel an event. So do take time to read through those. We will hold all the teams to those policies, and so just make sure that you're familiar with them. And then lastly, there's some information on how to be a volunteer to support the program in the region. So everything from event volunteers to, there's a brief guide on hosting a traditional event and what's required. So make sure if you're thinking about being part of helping everybody have a good season, that you go ahead and take a look at those. In addition to FIRST and our resources, there are also a bunch of great resources from some of the companies that support FIRST Tech Challenge. So Rev Robotics has a whole bunch of great videos and documentation and troubleshooting tips on their website. Pittsco Tetrix has information on their website, including CAD models for all their pieces and building tips. Similarly with AndyMark, including AndyMark's your resource if you wish to buy field and game elements. One of the resources you want to use sort of very cautiously is social media. So one of the things to remember is that social media is a free range, Wild West frontier, and you really want to proceed with caution. You have people expressing their opinions, and so certainly some of the folks may be pretty knowledgeable, but recognize that they are just opinions and they aren't official answers to any questions. Answers you see on social media don't count for official answers. Those official answers are always going to come from the FIRST Q&A forum, not from places like Discord or Reddit or things like that. And we had mentioned before we were going to do a raffle from our registered teams for a free tournament registration. And lo and behold, our raffle pulled up. The team 11201, the Piedmont Pioneers, congratulations. Your first qualifying tournament will be free. We appreciate everybody taking the time to register for this event today. Next steps. So I mentioned before, we're going to have a town hall meeting in a couple of weeks. It's scheduled for September 29th at 7 p.m. There's a link to register for the town hall on the NorCal FTC website. So want to make sure that you register for that and be prepared. We will try to put together a brief sort of overview of what we intend to cover in the town hall. But a big part of it is really discussion with the community. Make sure you've joined the Google group. We do use that as our primary method of communication. Typically in a season, the team will get one direct email from us, either myself or Diane, probably Diane. And then everything else will come sort of in a broadcast mode through the Google group. So you want to really make sure that you're paying attention to that. And then the big part of the season is just to have fun and build some neat robots. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys create to play this season's game. With that, I've run through all my prepared material. We have about maybe 10 minutes. We can go through questions if there are any.
Mark, is it possible just to bring up norcalftc.org and show people how to join the Google group, where it's
I don't have
actually
any
at?
way of doing that with the way I'm presenting right now.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. There's a big button at the top that says join the Google group or something like that.
It says join. Yeah, it's a big black box. And if you hover over the word join, it's actually a button.
Yeah, you click it and it'll take you straight to the Google group.
Great. One of the things with Google Groups, the default appears to be no email. So make sure you edit your default settings to actually receive the email instead of always having to go over to that site to see the messages. That trips this up.
Thank you.
And are these slides going to be available and posted on the NorCal website?
We're anticipating publishing them as a PDF. And the link to the PDF will be published about the same time as the link to the video.
I think other than event hosting and field game questions, I think we've answered all of the questions. We'll give it another couple of minutes to see whether anything else pops up.
Well, I actually have my two head referees are here, and I have a surprise guest visitor. One of the other members of the game design committee. Maybe he'll join us for some of the field Q&A. I'll put a microphone on him and make him earn his keep.
That sounds wonderful. And that will get kicked off right at 11 a.m. Pacific, is that right?
Barring any technical difficulties, that's the goal, 11 a.m.
Okay. And Diane wanted me to just remind everybody that this recording, as well as the 11 o'clock game recording and all of the workshops, if you could go back to that slide, Mark, all of that will be put on the norcalftc.org website.
There'll be links to them. They'll likely be published as part of our YouTube channel.
Yep. And the YouTube channel is easy to find. If you just go to YouTube, search for NorCal First Tech Challenge, it comes right up. So.
Yep.
So for those that have unique situations, we've got a couple of team very highly specific emails that came up around specific situations. For those kinds of questions, I think it's probably best to email ftc@playnetlearning.org. It's difficult in a forum like this with hundreds of people on to answer very, very specific team questions. I think we're done.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. And we look forward to talking to you again in about 20 minutes. We have a multi-camera setup with the possibility of looking close at all aspects of the field. So it should be fun to play with. It's always good to have good toys. And we got a bunch of great, knowledgeable people here. So looking forward to talking to you all again real quick. Good luck with your seasons.
Great, and we'll be back on this channel at 11. We're going to cancel it now, but we'll be back at 11. Is that right?
That is exactly correct.
Okay, that way we have separate recordings and not one multiple hour recording, which is
Exactly.
really tough.
All right. So
Great.
good luck,
So we're going to
everyone.
drop this, everybody. We'll see you back on this channel at 11 o'clock.